We've discovered patterns.
The connection was always there.
This changes everything we thought we knew about human health.
Hello and welcome everyone to Health Revealed. My name is Cory Endrulat. I am joined by Stephanie MoDavis, Scott Gordon, and Leslie Powers. Welcome back to our interview series where we will be sharing with you more amazing guests and unique or untold perspectives to shift our current paradigm of health and all the institutions in our world. From the micro to the macro, the individual to the collective, we aspire to connect the mainstream and the alternative, integrating all the solutions, and we welcome you to participate in this whole process, this whole project with us. Share your story, your resources with us. This is a fully independent project because we care deeply about our world and we believe that true healing, true freedom is indeed possible. In these interviews, we also want to provide you with practical action steps that you can take in your own life to better your own health. So without further ado, we have a guest today, David. David Braasch is a retired university professor, certified Qigong instructor, and residential caretaker and head gardener at the Florida Community of Mindfulness in Tampa, Florida, where he weaves Taoist and Buddhist principles into embodied, heart-centered practice. Drawing on decades of meditation, Tai Chi, and Qigong study, he teaches weekly public classes and offers private sessions through his business, Open Lotus Qigong, using mindful movement and breath to help people process trauma, regulate their nervous systems, and restore a sense of inner safety and vitality. In a world burdened by stress, disconnection, and generational wounds, David's work reveals Qigong as both a spiritual and somatic path of healing, aligning body, mind, and spirit with the natural flow of life. Beyond the cushion and practice hall, his commitment to compassion and action continues through his involvement with WellBuilt Cities and his service at The Drop, a day shelter in one of Tampa's roughest neighborhoods, where he helps lead efforts to provide dignifying, nutritious, home-cooked meals to those most in need. So you can also find his work at floridamindfulness.org and wellbuilt.city. I'll head it over to Stephanie.
Thank you, Cory. David, wow, what an amazing individual you are. I'm so excited to be talking to you more. My first question is, here in the West, where we all reside at this point, maybe except for Scott, Scott's over in Argentina, but we call our healthcare system the Western medical model. And most of us on this panel do have quite a bit of experience with some Eastern modalities. And it seems as though we have these two facets of care. One is more action-oriented, fight the disease, warlike mentality. One is much more a passive process of going within, understanding the transformational process that can happen within somebody's mind, body, and soul, and how healing can come from the inside out. My question to you is, your work particularly, how do you feel that it is not only a bridge or a luxury, but a necessity in our society today to integrate these sorts of modalities that you participate in?
Yes, that's a great question. So you mean the bridge between so-called Western and Eastern modalities of health?
Yeah. And why is your work, what you're doing, so critical for us here in the West at this time? What are we missing?
I think what we're missing is prevention. There's a saying in Qigong, don't wait till you're dying of thirst to dig your well, because sometimes it's too late. And in that case, Qigong is not as effective, right? And that's when you'd have to blast it with the Western, very powerful system, but also very destructive. Cancer being a very good example of that. I'm not against Western medicine at all. But there needs to be more emphasis on let's prevent the problem before it arises. I think in our culture, we just move so fast and we ignore what our body's trying to tell us. The body does not communicate through words, it communicates through sensation, which is why, in meditation, whether it's Taoist or Buddhist, the first instruction is come into your body, right? What's your body saying to you? Expressions of heat, of coolness, of tingling, of pain. And I think what I try to teach, not so much in the public classes, because I think most people are there for recreational Qigong, but I do bring that element of what's it like to be in your body right now? And what does that feel like just to be here? Because the body is always in the present moment. It hears in the present moment. Its heart beats in the present moment. Breathing in the present moment. And, when our minds are out of our bodies, so to speak, we develop lots of anxiety, which I think we all know emotional distress leads to a lot of illness. My teacher, Lee Holden in Santa Cruz, my Qigong instructor, at some point he quoted something. It's like 90% of clinical visits are some emotional disturbance based. I agree with that. Anything from headaches to migraines to sore shoulders, etc. So what I'm trying to do is get people as much as I can on both a physical and an emotional level, and I can talk about that later, is to recognize who they are and where they are. Did I answer your question, or did I just go off?
No. You did answer the question. And as you're speaking, I just want to parlay on what you're saying a little bit. In my past life, I'll say I've owned 3 yoga studios, and something that you're saying is hitting me so profoundly in this moment, because I used to see a lot of clients that would walk through the door, and if they weren't there to dabble in yoga and just have it for a recreational activity, the recurring theme I would see would be somebody who has exhausted everything the Western medical modeled, exhausted everything they could come up with. They would say, I've done everything. I've changed my diet. I've this, I've that, I've this, I've that, I've this, I've that. And I'm still not okay. So I'm here. And at that point, I realized just what you said, is that usually their first or second class would involve them breaking out into tears at some point, because it was the first time maybe they allowed themselves to be back in their body and to see how far they've come from this innate spirit that they hold within. So I realized, just like you're describing, is that these practices should be there from the start. It's more of a lifestyle, because it is very difficult to have somebody come in that's already severely in a illness to somehow this is going to fix you. It's almost like you have to go back in and create a new, healthier foundation, and then allow the illness to do what it needs to do. But you're saying it's almost like a lifestyle. That's what I want to ask you, is like, tell me the difference between somebody who uses Qigong recreationally and someone who does take the time and it kind of embodies within them and it helps to change their life. What do you see the pros and cons of those two types of students?
The recreational, that's sort of like a large umbrella of Qigong. It's primarily activation of Qi, some stretching, and then the flow movements. With a private client or a group of clients, and most of mine have been individuals one-on-one, the difference is healing and transformation. Definitely major changes. And I can give you a good example. A woman came to me, and a woman that I knew, she had been a recreational Qigong student, but she was suffering severe depression. And her son had committed suicide. And then about 2 years later, her husband died. So she's all alone in the world, and she's just really struggling. So she came to me and said, can you help me? And I said, yes, Qigong addresses these emotional issues, right? So for depression and sadness, that whole spectrum in 5-element flow or 5-element medicine or the 5-element approach, that's issues with the lung, that energy, either physical or emotional. And so that aspect of medicinal Qigong uses sound and color to transform the sadness and depression into inspiration and courage to go on with life. In this particular case, I worked with an acupuncturist, a good friend of mine up in Gainesville, to amplify the effects of the Qigong. And her assessment, and my assessment as well, after we got her doing it regularly, not just like once a week, where she was actually doing the practice, the sounds and the colors, the visualizations, the movements associated with the lungs and the healing of the lungs. The acupuncturist, who's also a Qigong practitioner, says, man, her Qi is flowing like you would not believe. And I said, what do you think that is? Because she's doing the practice. She's doing your Qigong. So the difference, I think, would be the recreational is good for you and it feels good and it's relaxing. But when you get into the medicinal aspect, you see change. The only thing is people have to be willing to do it. I've had others come to me, like they'll do, like one woman is just really, really a mess. And she comes to my recreational class, or used to, but she was, severely depressed, going through a really ugly divorce, asked me if I could help her. And we did one session, and she started crying, and she gave up after that. I don't know if it was just that she got so relaxed that she could open up and finally feel, this is what I'm really feeling. I got to let this pass through me, or you can hold on to it and let it, block your chi, if you want to put it that way, your prana, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So to me, the big difference is seeing people actually change. But one thing I say, you have to be willing to be a student. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, this will not work.
David, one last question. For those of us in our audience who don't know what Qigong is, can you give us a real clear definition of the practice?
Well, it's the long answer is it's a 4,000-year-old art form, and all martial arts come out of Qigong in some sense. Tai Chi does. Tai Chi came out about 800 years ago. But for me, what it is the art of effortless power. It's just stepping into the flow of life. And Qigong mimics nature. It mimics birds. It mimics animals. It mimics water. It just looks directly what's out there. And even at children throwing tantrums, they've turned that into Qigong moves. That becomes somatic shaking, so-called wild horse shaking. So it's for anyone that really wants to feel more energy, their natural energy, instead of relying on artificial stimulants and depressants to achieve some sort of state. It's using the body's natural abilities to heal itself, to energize itself, and to calm itself. It's already there. And, there's a, saying, he said, why don't we see Taoist Qigong temples? And the answer is, it's right here. We don't need to go anywhere else. It's all right here. So it's very similar to yoga. I mean, if you saw Qigong moves, and I have two of my good friends who are yoga instructors here at the center, they're like, that's just yoga. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just a word. I mean, Qigong has different things, some different stuff to it, but it's essentially trying to bring body awareness instead of running around in the past and the future all the time, which I think creates illness.
David, in Western medicine, the idea of Qi, the concept of Qi or Qi activation, is a foreign concept. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if you could describe more of the science of Qi and how it's beneficial to understand that concept of energy and what's so valuable about it that's missing from Western medicine.
I think what's missing, Qi Gong, which really means working with life force energy. Qi is life force energy. Gong means to work with skillfully. I think we've lost perspective on what we really are. We are electromagnetic beings. We have electricity in our body and we have magnetism in our body. And I think we're not recognizing that aspect. And Qigong taps into that. Okay, we see David here. I see Leslie. I see all of you. That's our form, right? But what's the formlessness? What's behind that? What's moving? What's animating this thing, that life force energy? And we often run into mysteries. Like what beats our heart? It's electrical, but where does that come from? We know what happens when the heart stops. We start it with what? Electricity. But what keeps that going? What is the origin of that? And that's when we run into these mysteries of life. We can't understand them so much, but we can experience them. And I have a feeling I'm not answering your question, so maybe better rephrase it for me.
Well, how would you describe the concept of Qi itself, and how do you measure it in the body?
Wow, that's a great question. How do I explain the concept of Qi? It's not really a concept, and this is where language can really fail me. It's something that needs to be experienced. So a lot of the times, and Corey, maybe you've noticed this, it's like, stop. What's it like? What does your body feel like right now? So when we do somatic shaking, and you can just look around the room and see how tense people are by how tight their somatic shaking is. So it can't really be explained. It has to be experienced. It's like explaining what guava tastes like to somebody who's never had it. But when they eat it, they get it. They've experienced it. So to me, Qi Gong, even though Qi is constantly present, it has to be experienced. Mm-hmm. And what I think, Corey, you've noticed a lot when we do our short meditation, somatic, come down into your body, what's it feel like? And then what's the most common reaction is, how do you feel now? I would say 99% of the people say, I'm really relaxed. Mm-hmm. And just carry that through the rest of your life or the rest of the evening. And so I don't think it can be explained, but it can be experienced.
David, this is the major, I'm sorry, Leslie. This is the major discrepancy between the Western and what you're talking about, I think, is that they don't value what's not quantifiable and measurable. And having this subjective experience, it just needs to be something that you do. So it's the relationship dysfunction that I don't know how we're going to bridge it unless they themselves experience it. Sorry about that, Leslie.
I'm curious to hear more about how this relates to the organs of the body, right? You mentioned the lungs, right? And so it seems to involve energy flow directed towards organs and that brings health. And could you explain more about the sounds and the ways that you can direct qi to organs, things like that?
Sure. So in the 5-element flow of Qigong, there's metal element, which is lung. Sometimes it's called air in the Tibetan form, but Chinese, it's metal, and then which would be the lungs and a large intestine, but we'll just deal with the primary organ. Second one is water. So water is kidneys. Third one is wood, which is the liver. Fourth one is fire, which is the heart and the pericardium. And the last one is earth, which is stomach and the digestive system. So I'll give you an example. So for the woman that I mentioned that was having severe depression, right? It took her a long, and I just saw her yesterday. She's wonderful. She's just alive. So with that, in that case, what you want to do is you've recognized that the energy, the lung energy, now this is not a physical lung ailment. So that's a different sound, but for the emotional aspect of that energy of depression and sadness. And you'll notice when people are sad, they often do this. They're holding their chest. They're trying to heal their lungs, that energy. I should not say the physical organ itself. And so with that, so each of those organ systems has a sound, or actually 3 sounds, and a color associated with it. So for the lungs, it's white. So a typical session with a client would be, we would do some activation of qi, some light stretching, but then we would go into the flows, and those would specifically focus on the lungs where the depression and the sadness are residing. And so there's a very simple move called Buddha holds up the earth. You get here, you hold the lungs, and you go up. And then as you come down, you make the lung healing sound, which is like SS, it's like a snake. That's for the emotional side. And then you just hold here, and you imagine white light, your lungs filling with white light and healing. And there's another aspect of Qigong, which you would breathe out gray matter, the stagnation, but that's a slightly different treatment. And then you just do that for several minutes. You can do it this way, or you could do Buddha holds up the earth, right? And then the thumbs point out because that's the meridian for the lung. And then you just keep doing that, and then just hold that and hold the feeling in the lungs in white healing light. And if it were an issue of fear and fear or lack of tranquility, we would work on the kidneys, and there would be a specific sound for that and a specific move. So each organ has its own move and its own color and its own sound. Now, if it's the physical, say your lungs, you have, and I've done this with, when I had a cold, you do a different move, and it's actually healing the actual organ itself. So the sound becomes zzz. And if you do that, you can feel the lungs vibrating. So the S turns to a Z. It's vocalized, basically, is what happens. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it work. I've seen it work in myself. I've seen it work in those who are willing to be treated and to go through it and to work with an acupuncturist. I've seen major transformation. Wow. Did I answer your question, Leslie?
Yes, you opened the door to, I'm sure, a very complex series of answers. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing.
There's another practice that you mentioned that I am fascinated with its potential therapeutically, and that is gardening. Do you want to comment on how that, why you're so involved with that, and how that it's also common to West and East, as a therapeutic, spiritual, and practical practice. Do you want to comment on what you see or the benefits health-wise, spiritual, and otherwise?
Sure, that's a great question. So Corey's familiar with our campus. We're a very large Buddhist organization, but we don't preach Buddhism, right? It's just what we base our meditation practices on. We also teach Taoism, but our campus is a living garden. It's beautiful. It's got a pond, waterfalls, fish. In fact, I have a woman out doing working meditation right now, trimming the pentas that got burned in the freeze. And we also have a small community garden in front of our house. We bought a house. I find that gardening may be the ultimate mindfulness practice, meditative practice, because you're outside, you're with nature, you're not separate from nature. We spend so much of our time distancing ourselves from nature when in fact we're very much a part of nature. So I think working with soil and the smell of soil and getting your hands dirty and your fingernails dirty and seeing the impermanence of life, something is planted, it grows, and then it dies, or it needs trimmed, or it needs pulled, whatever the case may be. I think that tuning into impermanence is really, really important because it has its advantages. It's like nothing stays the same, and that includes you. You are able to transform. And I think seeing life cycles of plants is really helpful for people, especially, I've run 2 community gardens, and I don't know what it is exactly. I think it's just the experience of being in sunshine and open air and out of fluorescent lights and, slowing down. I think slowing down, gardening forces you to slow down. It's not a fast activity, which is why I think a lot of people don't like it. It's not fast enough. And I think we do, in our culture particularly, we're all familiar with American culture. We are used to doing everything quickly so that we can get on to the next thing. We've got that to-do list. And one big lesson for me and my teacher has taught me this: just work this part right now. Just stay here and just work this one section and weed, and just stay there for an hour. You don't have to run to the next section of the garden. It's an acre and a half, so it's quite large. So Scott, did I answer your question? I can't hear you. Sorry. I think you're muted.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, David. I, get involved with food forest and growing food as well. So of course, this is something that I'm very passionate about. And being that you mentioned several times, I've gone to the Florida Community of Mindfulness. I've personally experienced the effects of Qi, and that's what keeps me coming back. I realize, wow, this is just so powerful. And I was practicing a little bit of Qigong, Tai Chi on my own before I went to the Florida Community of Mindfulness. And so I did a little search. I was like trying to see, well, maybe I could do it with a group, maybe there's some sort of class going on. And it was amazing. Doing it with other people, I felt like I was really in tune, like the chi is just circulating all around the room, can kind of imagine that. But yeah, the center is such a great demonstration or example to the world what an alternative or Eastern Taoist Buddhist type of healing modality could be introduced to this world. I mean, a place where people can go even to retreats, right? So I want you to describe a little bit about the Florida Community of Mindfulness, your role within the institution, and what are some of your experiences living and helping to operate this whole center, which, by the way, is off grid now, right?
No, it's not off grid. You
Okay.
can't be off grid legally, but we are 100% solar. Everything is wired for solar, every
Yeah, well,
building.
that's incredible.
My role, is that what you're asking, Corey?
Yes, and any experiences you want to share as well.
Well, I mean, we were established to serve as a charging station where you can recharge and practice compassion out in the world. That's really our teacher's vision. And he's been practicing Buddhism for over 50 years, since the 60s. He's in the vanguard of that. And so he had this vision. We bought this old dilapidated church with heroin addicts in it and, all that comes along with that, in the roughest part of Tampa, and it still is, but we're changing that. So we've established this oasis. For you that don't know, we're on Nebraska Avenue. It is the center of human and drug trafficking in Tampa. And if you walked out with me right now, we could stand for 10 minutes and see an example of that almost immediately. But then here we have this oasis. And I think people feel that energy because we've never had anybody vandalize us, deface the property. We've had people sleeping on the property, using the bathroom on the property, but no violence. It's been quite amazing for 15 years, not one incident. And I think they feel something is coming from here. They feel that energy. And we have a motel next door. It's notorious for drug dealing. And there was a young woman out there waiting on the man to show up. And I said, why don't you come back here? Why don't you come back to the garden? We'll talk to him later. And as soon as she gets back there, she kicks off her shoes and she's just like, I don't need drugs. I don't need drugs. And I saw her one other time after that. She came to a meditation session, and then I don't know what happened to her, but she could feel it. And I think that has always been our intention. We're not a shelter, right? We're extending into that shelter across the street. But my experience here is making this a place where people can at least see that healing and transformation is possible, that there is another way to live. So Thich Nhat Hanh, I don't know if you are familiar with him. He's our root teacher. So Thich Nhat Hanh, my teacher was Thich Nhat Hanh's first Western student. He lived with him in Paris in the same apartment back in the 70s, mid 70s. And Thich Nhat Hanh has something called, must establish communities of resistance, not like war resistance, but doing something that shows there is another way to do this. There is another way to approach health. There is another way to approach relaxation. There's other ways to do that. There is another way. And that's what we are. And, even when we have contractors coming onto campus, like solar contractors or whatever they're doing, electrical, these guys, they're not used to this, and they'll walk back like, what is this? This is amazing. Look at all this bamboo. And they really feel it. I don't think they're changed, but they can feel the energy that's emanating from this. And it's a transformative experience if you want to be changed and transformed.
Wow.
So what else did that?
Yeah, that's very inspirational for people who may not live in Florida or in Tampa to see that something like this could be created that can help heal people in different ways that they never maybe experienced before. Could you maybe expand on the well-built cities and the drop, what you talked about with like some of the shelter that you're
Sure.
creating?
Yeah, this is an interesting story. So I've been affiliated with The Well since 2014 when we had a shelter about a mile away, and we were shut down by the city for code violations. Oh, you don't have a curb, you can't park there. That's $200 a day, et cetera. They basically shut us down because of the neighborhood just didn't like what we were doing, and I could see their point. So over the years, Grace Point, which was the former WellBuilt, was a federally funded program. And surprise of surprises, they lost their funding in July of last year from the federal government. And they were mental health counseling, drug addiction counseling. So they had to abandon that building, 8,400 square foot building. So the drop, anyway, the visionary, John Dungler, there was a write-up about him in the Tampa Bay Times. My teacher read it and said, do you know this guy? I was like, yeah, I've known him for like a long time. I've talked about him. He goes, we need to work with him. This is engaged Buddhism. This is engaged Christianity. And it's like, you're talking my talk, because that's what I've always tried to do. So we, about 4 of us are very active in the community. And so one thing about that is there is no preaching there, right? This is about dignity. So the drop stands for D is dignity, R is resilience, O is operations, and P is partnership. So they're working with all kinds of people. So we're Pioneer Medicals bringing in clinics, free clinics. We're going to have an HIV clinic. We've got a computer lab where people can get back, actually do the paperwork that they need to get back into society, or do a Zoom interview. This has all happened in 3 months. The most exciting thing is, I was telling you about the motel next door. We toured the property on Friday to buy it and turn it into temporary housing for people who are homeless but ready to integrate back into society. They're just almost there, right? And they're ready to go. They just don't have anywhere to stay, because rent in Tampa is outrageously high, and that's why so many people are leaving. You can't afford to live here. So the thing about the drop is you must respect these people, even though they're drug addicts, they're homeless, they're mentally ill in many cases. You treat them with absolute dignity, because that's what they need. They are human beings. And so we're out there, hospitality is the key. So what I was noticing early on, Corey, and the rest of you, is that, everything we do is donated. So Dunkin' Donuts was donating a container this big full of, maybe 400 donuts. And it's like, this is not a workable model for health. So for the last 3-4 weeks, in fact, Peggy, my friend, is coming over tonight. We're going to cook this nice lentil soup with collards from our vegetable garden and mustard greens and whatever else we can get, cook it up tonight, and then I'll take it over there tomorrow, and we'll feed 70 people. And they're not munching on sugar and ultra processed, all the things they don't need, right? Because they're getting jacked up on caffeine and sugar. That's just not good for them. So that we're trying to approach it a little bit differently, and it's worth it. I mean, you see there's something different. They miss the donuts, but they're not complaining. They said, this soup is, and Peggy's a great cook. This is amazing soup. And so we have bread and soup. That's basic nourishment of body and soul. So I'm very excited about it. And I'm excited how our community, the Florida Community of mindfulness has responded to help them. It's very exciting. It's been transformative. In Buddhism, we talk about compassion and loving kindness. Well, you need to get out there and practice it. You can't just talk about it and meditate on it. You got to get out and practice. And it's really beautiful to see Christianity and Buddhism just meld. It's all the same, brother. It's all the same. And it's a wonderful experience. It's transformed my life. Even my teacher said, you've changed. Something has changed in you. So that's a long answer to a short question. Or anything else?
I'd love for you to expand a little bit on how you've changed, because I think it's a powerful point you're making, that doing the practices in addition to service is a powerful combination for internal.
Yeah, we all know what the news is about, right? You don't even need 5 minutes anymore to see that we have entered an era of meanness, anger, derision, lack of caring, every afflictive emotion that's possible. We are being encouraged to engage in that by our leaders. And I don't buy it, and I won't buy it. I'll never buy it. But I can see how people can get sucked into it. And for me, the transformation has been, I'm here for you. Right? I'm here for you. I'm present for you. And it's no longer an intellectual pursuit. It's like it's almost like Qi, you can talk about poverty and homelessness, and it's just a conceptual activity. But when you're really into it and you can help somebody, that's the transformation. Because at the drop and here at Florida Community of Mindfulness, we know we can't do it alone. And we know the government is not going to do much. And to see that there are people, and this is just what really transforms me, these people are dedicated, younger than me. I'm 60, but we got 30 and 40-year-olds who are giving their lives to the service of other human beings. And that just brings tears to my eyes. And they're in it. They are in it. And, I think when advice I got from a Zen teacher we just finished a retreat with him yesterday. They just left this morning for Oregon. I remember it was a Q&A session. He says, well, the world is just such a mess. I can't take it. I'm getting depressed. He goes, then go out and help somebody. Get out of your head and go out and help somebody. It's like, oh, that's me. I've never been clinically depressed, but I've been down about the world's not turning out the way I want it. But the world is what it is. And right now, the targets from whatever level are the most vulnerable. I was talking to a couple friends over at the drop the other day. They're activists. And they're like, yeah, they want to do now is they want to cut SNAP benefits to unmarried women with children because they're not married. I was like, what? How more vulnerable can you be than be a single mom with kids and you're trying to feed them and you're going to cut my benefits? And they were angry. It's like, well, we just have to recognize our sphere of influence. What can we do right now? So the change is, it's sort of like the serenity prayer. What can I change and what can I not change? And I'll send Corey the link of our opening day. There's one man who is a young man. He's probably former heroin addict. I'd say maybe 30. And he gave his testimony and it was all spontaneous last 2 weeks ago. They didn't plan it. And he said, before I lost my dad, my mom, and my sister, and then I became homeless. I'd lost everything. And then he just talks about the transformation of how he feels a sense of community. And I think, that's the transformation too, that there are communities that are devoted to doing things a different way. I think it's really important.
Wow.
I really love what you're demonstrating here, where it gets out of the concepts, the conceptual ideas, and into the actual boots on the ground interactions, and how powerful the direct connection and building of relationships with people heals the division and the misunderstanding people. And what we see in the news and so forth is this huge disconnect of one group from another group and very much misunderstanding. So I do think this is what you're describing is a real solution to the angst in the world and this conflict that we see. Is we just need to build like heart-based relationships on the ground.
David, you brought up something in what you were just discussing about this can't be really conceptualized. And I want to just ask you said you were an academic professor, right? Corey, you mentioned that you were in academia.
Yep.
What advice would you give your past self or anybody watching who was really steeped into the intellectual pursuit, the knowledge path, academia, who just can't quite get on board with what you're saying? What advice would you give to your former self about what you're experiencing now?
Get out of your head, because academia is primarily conceptual. And when you bring that approach. So if I had known before I came to this practice, and that was the first thing my teacher pointed out to me, is you're approaching this intellectually, and it's not an intellectual pursuit. This is not conceptual. It's experience-based. And I think, I mean, Scott, you're a teacher. You understand this. We're often driven by curriculum objectives, results, right? Either to pass a test. I taught English as a second language and English. My advice to my former self would be, why don't you make this more of an experience for them as well? And we did have service-based stuff. I did have students, we went out to a, where did we go? Hydroponic farm somewhere. That was years ago. And fish farm. That was it. Fish farm, Morningstar. More, I would have said, try to give your students something that they can really grab onto rather than thinking this is just about a grade. But that's, you know, that's how we're conditioned. And to break out of that model can be difficult. I did it on a few occasions. And, you know, something that we do, at least how I was trained, is when you're doing something like very conceptual, the last thing you do is now make it personal for them. How does this apply to you? I mean, we've talked about all these concepts of AI and this and Google and all this because I was teaching digital literacy. But how does that affect you as a human being? So I think my advice would be you should try to do that more often in your teaching. But now I realize my teaching is my example of how I'm living my life, right? I'm getting out there, and I think that's inspiring people in our community. Yeah, so less thinking, more doing in a constructive way, not for the sake of doing, right? Not just to get through a to-do list, but in everything that you do, remember you're a human being, not a human doing. And you're being there for others. You're opening up your heart to others. And you're creating a community that can have some resiliency against everything that's being thrown at us to make us angry, to make us unhealthy, mentally and.
What I'm hearing from you that's really striking my heart is that when you lead by demonstration, you don't have as much opportunity to necessarily compartmentalize your life. When you're in the academic mindset, I think there's your teaching skills, but then there's like your life is kind of behind the scenes and all sorts of interesting stuff can go on as we see in the real world when things are compartmentalized and really fractured. And what you're doing, what I'm really feeling from you is you're a real living demonstration and embodiment of showing all of yourself, more vulnerable sides, how you live, how you show up. It just feels so much more authentic.
Yep.
Maybe just seeing a teacher talking knowledge.
Yeah, there was very few times, never in a classroom, where tears would come to my eyes teaching grammar. Okay. But when I'm out there and I'm seeing somebody really struggling, it's okay to cry, not weep, but just, yeah, I get it. I see what you're going through, and we're going to do what we can, not just me, but we're going to do what we can. So a good example of this, right after we finish this, I'm going to walk 2 blocks. And we have opened up a food truck called Well Fed. And it's pay as you can, pay nothing, pay it forward. It's good, healthy food, no questions asked. And to me, that's, like you said, a more authentic life. And I think that's important. I think that's really, really important.
So powerful. I would like to ask, is there any specific, you shared, some of the how to open up kind of the lung energy. Is there any specific moves or practices that you would like to share with our audience? Maybe one that you would want to just share. Maybe it's a sound or something that maybe you recently learned about, or something that comes to mind that you think people should know about. Because there's like thousands of moves. You said this is like thousands of years old. Is there any particular moves or anything that people should try to practice? Or could you demonstrate any one of them for us?
Well, I mean, we do this in the class, Corey, at the end, the closing forms. And it's something when we were working with formerly homeless kids and kids who had been prostituted. It was a program called Starting Right Now, and I teach them Qigong. One thing that they really, really responded to was centering. So that's that. You remember this one? You just come up and you just bring this hand right down the midline through the consciousness, the heart, and integrate it into the body. You go to the other side, breathe in, and just breathe out. It's really good if you work with clients. If I don't know what all of you do, or are you like counselors or have some counseling ability, you pick up a lot of negative energy. I don't know if you've experienced that. I mean, I've had cases where I've helped somebody, they're really hurting inside and suffering, and I would go home, I just lay down. I was like, what is wrong with it? And I'd taken on so much of that energy, I hadn't cleared it. So one thing you can do, and Scott, you probably know, a rough day in the classroom, is you just find a quiet space, and it's just called pulling down the heavens. And you just palms up, and then you come down and you just breathe out and your hands face the body, and you're harmonizing the chi of the mind and the heart and the body. Because if the chi is unbalanced in the mind, you're being too conceptual. If it's unbalanced in the emotional, the heart center, you're being too emotional. So you want to bring it all that energy down, hands facing the body, smooth out that chi, and then lock it into your center, your body, right below your belly button. That also works for insomnia as well. So it's just a very deep breath in, breathe in. And if you want, you can use the heart sound, which is ha, like ha, ha, ha. Just ha, do that 8 or 9 times. And you'll notice a difference. It doesn't take much. I was just reading a story where a guy went to a monastery, a Buddhist monastery, and he's telling the monks, I just spent 3 hours coming back to be mindful. And it's like, why'd you do that? You just need 3 breaths. Just breathe mindfully 3 times. You don't need 3 hours. Just one, come up and come down. But, and the ones that we do, like the heart, that one, this very relaxing. I mean, it's a very simple move called cloud hands, hands moving across the heart, and it's very good for anxiety. And it was the move that when I was getting certified, I was out in the garden. We got a huge Bodhi tree, beautiful meditation garden. I was like, oh, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And the second thought was, I've done this before in a previous life. Absolutely convinced of it. Not intellectually, I could feel it. Oh, I've done this before. Wow. That's another topic. Let's not go that way. But it's just the centering. I mean, the homeless kids, they were in residence, they were in school, they were getting ready for college. They did live rough lives, but they loved this. And if somebody was goofing off, it's like, center. They would slap them, center. And I realized it's because they're scattered and they recognize the value of it.
Yeah. What's coming to my mind is the word purpose and also application, right? The application of knowledge, getting it out of your head into the body, into action. Yep. And that when you learn something, what makes it meaningful is the purpose in real life, how you can apply that knowledge to help others, essentially, right, or create something good. And that's really what you're demonstrating in real life, is applied knowledge with deep purpose that I think is very transformative for the community that you are serving. And it's, I just imagine if every town, every city, every rough neighborhood had a center, like how transformative that would be to our whole.
No, I agree. And I think there are so many out there. I've met so many amazing people just in the last 3 months that are, working to get, it's hard to describe where we live, but we have these really low quality motels that serve as basically drug dens and prostitution. Basically, that's it. So if you walk out on Nebraska, you're going to see an example of that. So we work closely with there's an organization called Created, and what it does is it gets women out of prostitution. And I think I'm seeing a success story happening right now. She's very reluctant. I see her on the street all the time. I say hi to her. She comes by the drop to get some coffee, and we're not forcing her, but it's like, this is available to you. You have a higher purpose in life. And in Qigong, we say you're not vibrating at your highest frequency. And she's being beaten. It's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. But I think as of Friday, I talked to the woman that works with this. She's almost ready. And the woman that runs it was a prostitute for 15 years. And she's like, once she says yes, I will come and pick her up and I will take her where she needs to go, but she has to be willing. So I think, seeing little things like that where, lives are changing. I mean, the hardest thing for my practice as a whatever I am, a bodhisattva or whatever, a practitioner, is I can't help everyone. I want to help everybody, but you have to have your compassion, energy of your compassion has to be directed where it's not what's often called idiot compassion, where you're not enabling people. You're not creating a codependent relationship. You're in there to help them have some dignity in life and to get through life. And this is really my philosophy, and also the WellBuilt ecosystem. They have a bike store called WellBuilt at the University Mall. And the whole principle behind that is you come in here, you're out on the street, you come in here and work 15 hours and we'll give you a bike and we'll get you a bus pass. You can put that bike on the front of the bus and you can get around the city and you go find a job. So it gives them confidence. It gives them hope. It inspires them. We're not going to give you a bike, but we'll work for the bike. And then we want you to go out and get a job. And it happens. I mean, I just saw a guy, he just got out of homelessness and he just bought his first car and we helped him with the financing. He's got a job at a nice restaurant. He was a former chef. He's also an addict.
Wow.
So yeah, it's powerful stuff. I mean,
Do you engage or work with substance abuse treatment programs as well?
We have the agency for, what's it called? Agency for Control something. It's called ACTS. They deal with that. So they're probably there. No, they'll be there tomorrow. They bring a van by and they're like, come on in, we'll help you. Baycare, which is the largest health provider, is really invested in us. They gave us like $50,000. They have a mobile clinic. And then Advent Health has invested heavily in us. And it's pretty amazing what's happening.
Yeah. The mindfulness practices in general are really powerful teachings for people who are addicted to substances. And I think Qigong would be a marvelous addition to their rehab. Yeah.
Qigong is, it's not in the picture yet, but Qigong is for anybody, like if you're on the spectrum for autism. It's really good for that. And I am on the spectrum a little bit. It's helped me amazingly. It's, the guy, Lee Holden out in Santa Cruz, who told a story. He's like, his biggest client is actually Weight Watchers. And Qigong is not cardio, but it looks at the body as an energetic system. And he did a session with a group of people in Weight Watchers. And one woman said, I am so pissed off at you. He's like, why? He goes, why didn't you tell me this worked before? This is how I need to approach it. I'm seeing my body in a different way as an energetic system that can heal itself. So what was your question again, Leslie?
I was just reflecting on how useful the Qigong practice would be with people overcoming addictions. And I think the Weight Watchers is a good example. And this idea of kind of calming or taming, this restless hunger, for something external, and then coming back to the self and slowing down and learning how to be present. I mean, it's very powerful. Then add on to that just the effects of the energy movement. It's very beautiful, very practical.
It's very practical. And it's, I think Qigong, for me, the beauty of it sees the human as a total thing, not as a separate thing. Oh, that's your physical side. No, it's one thing, if you want to call it a thing. And it addresses that. It addresses you. Actually, it's got a deep psychology behind it. And there's a five element personality test. I think you probably look it up online. And I took it and it nailed me. It says, you are a caretaker. You are earth oriented. You are grounded. I was like, yeah, that is me. It's very me. It totally describes me. And so I think it takes into account on its deepest level, who are you? Who are you really? Because often I think we're not who we think we are. When we're not who we really are. No, we think we are not what we think we are. That's how I should put it. I don't know where things are going to go with the drop. I know in my own meditation practice and with my mentees, I work with a lot of ex-addicts. I'm working with one right now. You don't have to be that way. You're something more. And Christian terms, it would be, this is not God's purpose for you. God has a different purpose for you. I think it's just the exact same thing. You just speak the language. And it's been good. It's been my entire department was terminated 2 years ago illegally. We're still in litigation with the university. And I thought, oh, this is great. Look what just opened up. I don't have a job. I don't have health insurance. Look what just opened up. The whole field is awaiting for me to plant seeds and to nurture them. And it was like, I gave a Dharma talk on that. And people are like, you're not upset you lost your entire career? It's like, no, 33 years was a good time for any career. That's enough. Now it's time to do something else. And this is what I'm doing. I don't make much money.
David.
Yep.
My teacher used to say to me back in the day, ignore the story and see the soul. And I want to ask you about love.
Okay.
And I want to ask you about the power of love as a healing tool, maybe the best healing tool.
It is the best healing tool. And there's different kinds of love. There's romantic love, but there's a love of loving kindness, and the practice we do in Buddhism a lot. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful and at ease. And when you're serving people food, you're nourishing them with love. I feel it. Like when Peggy and I are chopping up vegetables, making a beautiful lentil soup tonight, I feel that love going into it. And I feel it when I go out there and we serve it to them. They just look at you with like, you see me here. And they'll often say that. They'll say, thank you for seeing me, which I think is a profound expression of love, to see somebody as a human being and not as somebody to be ignored because they're unwashed or they have mental illness or just having bad luck. They've lost community. And I think love for us and the Florida Community of Mindfulness, but the drop as well, community is that expression of love. We are here for you as much as we can. And there's no holding back. I mean, we're fully engaged, and we are encouraged to go out and sit with people and talk to them. Some don't want to talk. Some can't talk without a psychotic episode. But those who, they see you and they're like, you're seeing me as a human being. Nobody else does. And to me, that's a profound expression of love. And that transforms me and whoever does it. I mean, sure, you've experienced it. When you are loving others, you feel different. I mean, it transforms you. It transforms your whole body.
So profound. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, this has been an amazing interview, and not just like you're sharing both the systematic approach and a personal approach at the same time. And that's what I find so amazing and inspiring for someone like me who's like trying to also create systems, trying to create, a place where people can heal, systems where people can learn about all sorts of ideas like I never looked into meditation until I found out about Taoism and this whole realm of Eastern philosophy I never knew existed. I grew up, kind of in the Catholic Christian world. And even still, like you said, I could see how they interweave. But it's incredible when you learn from people around the world and you learn from people who you may not think, oh, they don't have a philosophy or they don't. No, it's like everybody has something to learn from. It's just so beautiful. So we have a question that we like to ask a lot of our guests toward the end. So this will be sort of my final question, if you don't mind. Talking about systems, and I love how you brought up humanity, because I think a running theme in our work with Health Revealed is, can we find the humanity in the system? And really, are we treating each other as just people? Or are we treating them as like special authority figures with like special rights and titles and badges? And where does that come from? So we often challenge a lot of the mainstream institutions and we say, well, where is your power? Where's your humanity? And so how do you think the systems can do better if they want to do better? Could the government help people in the ways that you're talking about? Or is it up to us, the people, to really change a lot of this? What are your thoughts on all that?
I think it has to be both. And we have to see this as a symbiotic relationship rather than a divisive relationship. And right now it's very divisive. I will say the Tampa city government is pretty progressive. They did that year-long program where bus fares were free on Florida Avenue, which is 1 block from where we are, so the homeless could get around. I thought that was a wonderful program. It cost them over $1 million. But we wanted to try and bring it over to our road. They canceled it 3 weeks ago. And then they had this opportunity for $5 million, a surplus. And so we went down campaign. We just need 800,000. You can bring them, or many organizations that help people along Nebraska Avenue. And there's like, well, we aren't going to do it because the federal directive right now is no free rides on anything, food stamps, transportation. So I think we need to stop. We need more cooperation between the federal government and the city governments and the state governments. But right now, I think the atmosphere is so poisoned that it's going to be these communities of resistance that will have to step up for the time being. Mm-hmm. And until that happens, I mean, if you're not seeing your other human beings as brothers and sisters, and then you're just going to do everything for the self-gratification. Egoism.
Thank you so much, David, for sharing that. Is there any final closing statement or anything that you want to share with our audience before we end this episode? And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your insights, your experiences, these stories. I mean, it seems like we can go on forever talking about these different systems, especially the ancient philosophies behind this, the psychology behind it, nonetheless, the moves and the actions. So I encourage our audience, learns about a lot of this too. I remember just looking into this, I was like, oh my gosh, just what a world of information. And you have tons of books behind you as well. So is there anything that you want to share with our audience as a final note?
I would like to share that I am inspired and encouraged to know there are people like you who are trying to make a difference, because sometimes it seems insurmountable, right? I mean, there are big problems out there, but they're not unsolvable. So I'm very, like I said, inspired to know there are people out there like you who have taken the time to share what we're trying to do. Let's do things a little differently, right? Let's shift. Let's do the shift. There are alternatives. There are other ways to approach this. And anger and hatred and divisiveness are not going to yield beneficial results. Maybe for some, but it's not going to help society as a whole to be less fractured and less divided. So that's what I would share.
Thank you so much, everybody. David Braasch, FloridaMindfulness.org, WellBuilt.City. Be sure to check it out. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This is Health Revealed. I appreciate it. Take care.